blackberries, you go, oh yes, you've got enough blackberries to make a pie with. Boy, this takes me back to my childhood, way back. You want one, Gus? You not been eating blackberries when you was picking them? There you go. Okay, I'll go over here and start making a pie for you. Hello and welcome back. Today I'm in what used to be my mother's kitchen. I'm at the old home place again today. And today I'm making blackberry pie. As you saw earlier, which would be my mother's great-grandchildren, went out and picked blackberries today, and they brought enough blackberries in for me to make a pie. So I'm going to be making a pie and showing you how my mother used to do years ago. As you can see, the kitchen is full of the grandchildren, and this is the way my mother's kitchen used to be, full of children and grandchildren. As we grew up and got married and had children, brought them back, the more the merrier in my mother's kitchen. That's the way it always was. How she made a blackberry pie. I've made my own pie crust, and I made that up early this morning. I won't have time to tell you how I made that, but I will on another show. I've already made my pie crust up. Got one layer I've got it in a Pyrex glass dish. Already added. I'm going to go ahead and add the blackberries. I've got about 3.5 cups of blackberries that the children picked in my dish. Next, I'm going to add about not quite a cup of sugar. And then I'm going to add a cup of sugar, almost a cup of sugar, not quite. Then I'm going to add something to thicken up the juice, because blackberries have a lot of liquid in it when they cook down. So you've got to have something to tighten up that. So my mother, when she didn't have cornstarch, she would always add flour. But I've got cornstarch today, and you don't need quite as much cornstarch as you do flour. I've got a tablespoon in my bowl, but I don't think I'm going to quite use that, and I mixed it in with a little sugar. That's the way she would do. She would either mix her flour or her sugar, flour and sugar together, or her cornstarch and sugar together. She just wouldn't throw it in her pie. So I've added probably a teaspoon of flour to that. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my fingers like she would do, and I'm just going to sort of sprinkle it around. But I'm not going to use, I don't think, the whole tablespoon of cornstarch. I don't think it's going to take that much to tighten that up, because you don't want your liquid too runny. Next, I've got a half a stick of butter. She always added some butter to this, and I think butter really adds to the flavor of your pie. So I'm going to slice up the butter. It's at room temperature, and so I'm going to go ahead and add this on top of my pie, on top of the berries. And you don't need to add any water or any other liquid to this, because like I say, the berries have enough water in them already when they cook down, and that's the reason I added the cornstarch to tighten that up a little bit, because you don't want it too runny. Okay, next I'm going to get my other half of my pie dough that I made earlier today, as I told you, and I'm going to roll that out, and I'm going to put that on top, and then we're going to put it in an oven. I usually bake my pies about 350. It's according to how hot your oven gets. And the oven that I have today is not quite as hot as the older oven that I had years ago. So I'm going to bake it on about, sometimes I turn it to 375. Either 350 to 375 is usually what I make my pies on. It usually takes about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour to bake this pie. You just have to keep an eye on it. When it starts turning brown and it starts bubbling at the top, that's when you need to take your pie out. It's done. When the liquid starts coming through and bubbling or coming to the top of your pie crust, that tells you, and the pie crust has already turned brown, that's time to take your pie out. But usually 45 minutes to an hour is what it takes for a blackberry pie. But everybody's oven is different, so just like I say, keep an eye on it. So I'm going to go ahead and roll out this pie crust right now. Then I'm going to put this on top. Put on top of your pie. Just kind of work from the center and work out. That's the way my mother taught me how to roll out a pie crust. Now, I like this a rolling pin that I got. She never used one like this, but it's fat in the middle and skinny on the ends, and to me that works really well when you're rolling out pie crust. It's better than the thick one all the way through. You know, you've seen the thicker ones. That's what I used to roll out my biscuits with. But this one right here particularly works really well, as you can see. It's just kind of thick in the middle, and I really like to use this for pie crust. It really flattens out your dough real good. So when I get it big enough to put on top of my pie, I'm going to put it on top of my pie. And I'm going to show you how she would, you can do all kind of fancy things for your pie crust, but my mother used them when she made like a pie like this with fresh fruit and berries, she would just, she really wouldn't make a fancy scallop or anything around it, but she'd just take a fork. Okay, now it's big enough to go on top of my pie crust. I'm just going to go ahead and add it like that on top. So that's the way that's the way it should look. I'm going to take a fork, and the tines of your fork, I'm just kind of mash down and see it makes a kind of a print on your pie crust like that, and you just go around the corner of that, and that's the way I'm just going to kind of hold it like that and put pressure to it to put the two pie crusts to kind of put them together where they'll bake together. And that's the way she would do a lot of her pies in the summertime, especially her fruit pies. I'm just going to keep going around like this until I get this pie crust mashed down. Now my mother, as I told you before when I'd make pies, she always made a wheat design on top of her pie. And honestly, I've never mastered that. I try, but when I'm on camera today, it puts a little pressure on me, so I'm not going to try it today. So I'm just going to show you what I end up doing when I make a fruit pie. But she used to make some of the prettiest wheat designs on her pies. And she just did it without any, it was just effortless for her. Okay, I've got all that worked in, and now I'm going to do like she would do. She took the sides of her fork, and she just went around her pie and kind of got the excess pie crust off of her off to make it look good. And then what I do is I go back around and kind of mash it down like that with my hand to make sure it's all worked in good. But that's the way that looks. And now I'm going to take a knife, and I'm going to cut some little slits, and you got to have slits cut in your pie for the steam to escape. And that's when it starts bubbling, and you see the blackberry juice coming through that and your pie crust is brown. That means that your pie is ready. 350 or 375. It's just according to how hot your oven gets. Everybody's oven's different. Bubbling through, the juice is bubbling through somewhat. Made, she would put either an egg wash or some cream. Back then we had, cows, and so we had our own fresh cream, and she would put heavy cream and put this over her top of her pie. And I'm going to do that today, and then I'm going to put some coarse ground sugar on top. That just gives your crust a little crunchy, and you got that sweetness too. And I think that really makes your pies really, really good. So I'm going to go ahead and do that today before I make this pie. And it really helps to turn your pie crust brown too. But I've got the cream, and I'm just going to go ahead and add this cream with the pastry brush. I'm just going to go ahead and brush this over the top of my pie. And then I'm going to add some, I like to get the coarse ground sugar. That just gives that extra crunch. It's called, and this is what it looks like. It's the coarse ground. And I'm just going to add that on top of the pie. Just sprinkle that on top. And then when that bakes, you'll have that baked in your pie crust, and it really, really makes it really good. I think it really adds to your pie. Okay, I think that's enough. Just sprinkle some on top. And now I'm going to put it in the oven. Okay, I've gotten the blackberry pie out of the oven, and as you can see, it's nice and brown. And if you look closely, you can see the blackberry juice has come to the top, and that's what you want. That tells you that your pie has cooked through, and your berries are good and done. So that's the way your pie should look. And I'm going to go over here and take it and set it down and let the grandchildren sample it. Okay, I'm going to get a piece out, and we'll do a sample taste to see how the pie turned out. Oh, yes, as you can see, now you're going to have to get a spoon and dip some of it out because it kind of fell apart on me. But lots of times fruit pies will do that, but just go ahead and dip that out. And you see the berries have cooked through, and they're nice. It looks like they're nice and tender. But let me do a sample taste on this and see. Oh yes, they're so good and so tender. It's got enough thickening in it where it tightened it up a little bit. You don't want it too tight, but you want it tighten up, your broth to tighten up a little bit. And that's what the cornstarch does. But it's got such a nice flavor and texture with the pie crust, and you taste the crunchiness of the sugar that's baked in the crust on top. That is really a good pie. And I hope that you enjoy making that as much as I have today. And as my daddy would always say as he was leaving his home, good luck to you.